Hey guys, this is Dan Hay from Far Cry 3 and you're watching Game Nuts.
See, the thing is, I was gonna ransom you. Then you start killing my men. Now the only way to kill you is to erase you completely. By the way, this lighter really sucks. Did you really think you could escape my island?
What can you expect in Far Cry 3? What can't you expect? I mean, what you can expect is a great big game. But more than that, we wanted to make sure that the single player experience was immersive. We have a really great opportunity with a first person shooter to have you actually just step into the skin of the game. We also wanted to make sure that the island was a character unto itself. That we have an insane cast of characters, but the island has to be a place that's beautiful, that it's exotic, that's lush. It has to be a place you want to visit, almost a place you'd want to live in. But then the flip side of that coin is that it has to be deadly. So for us, we know that if you're the type of player who wants to solve a problem with a gun, we want to offer you that experience. But it's about enticements. It's about the idea that as you're driving along, as you're flying over the island, that you can't help but hear a sound or see a glint of something or see something off in the distance, and 4 or 5 hours later you find yourself just out in the middle of nowhere hunting goats, killing Komodo dragons, using tigers to take over outposts, and you've just kind of lost yourself in the world.
You must live in the jungle to know the rules.
What we tried to do with this game was do something different. We had an opportunity to put a soldier and basically have the player be a soldier. But the reality was that we said, no, we want to take the player and make him a blank slate. We want to take the character and say, look, you're meeting somebody who's young, who's maybe a little bit naive about life, who's just backpacking through Asia and through all these islands and says, you know what, they hear about the island, there's a cool opportunity for them to go and explore, and they look and then they leap, but they really don't look hard enough. They don't really understand what they're getting themselves into. And they walk through a door and they meet Voss. And they realize very, very quickly that they are up to their neck. And so again, the island is beautiful, but it is also deadly. And so we watch as Jason begins to realize very quickly that life doesn't owe him anything. And once you deconstruct the player down a little bit, you break them down, maybe when the bone breaks, it comes back stronger. And that's what we see in Far Cry.
You live in this jungle. You die in this jungle.
He's some fucked up foreplay, huh?
That's a big question. What's your biggest enemy? I think it changes over time, right? At the very beginning of the game, I think the biggest enemy is probably the player's own imagination. We tried to make it like when you were a little kid and maybe you were going to bed and all the lights turned off and you started to hear a sound in the darkness and your imagination just goes crazy. Or that first time that you went camping and you're by the campfire and when the sun is out and the campfire is on, it's great. But as soon as the sun drops, everybody is a daylight atheist. Everybody's tough in the sunlight. But as soon as it gets dark, they're crying for mom. So I think the biggest enemy at the beginning of the game is almost the player's own imagination. They meet Voss, they understand that they're scared, they understand that the player has agency, but then as they begin to grow, they realize that there are pirates. And then they meet characters that they're not sure. There's subtlety and nuance to the performance. So they're not sure who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Nothing comes for free. And when you learn that lesson, it's a very hard lesson. So it changes over time.
They say this island will change you. That behind the beauty lies unspeakable darkness. You'll lose the ones you love.
You think you know what it takes to fucking kill?
And you'll question your sanity.
The pain will stop once Jason Cody is dead.
Honestly, I think the best analog for what Jason's going through is, you know when you left your parents' house and you thought to yourself, you're at that moment where you're just about to become an adult and you think, you know, my parents are idiots, they don't know what they're doing, they're old, they don't understand stuff, they don't understand me. Life owes me everything. The friends that I have are my best friends forever and will be my friends forever. And then 5 or 6 years later, you look back and you think, what the hell was I thinking? This is not at all the case. Jason is right at that precipice. So the deal is that he comes to the island and we give him an opportunity to be broken down a little bit, and then he begins to grow. And as he begins to grow, he has all these new experiences. He meets Citra, and he sees the way of the warrior, and he sees all the tattoos that he can get. And what's really interesting about the story is that we try and marry the open world to the single player. The whole idea of the missions that you're going through. So you have the open world, and you have this opportunity to learn all the things to turn the jungle into a supermarket, to start using animals as weapons, to start understanding how to harvest the open world and apply it to getting your friends back. And what's really interesting about Jason's story is that as he begins to grow and as he begins to get his friends back, they start to not recognize him anymore. And when you watch them sort of sit down and go, you know, Jason, you've changed. And he's like, yeah, I have. And it's for the better. They're not exactly sure.
I want to go home. The thing is, I did not bring you here. You walked in here by your own goddamn self. Now here you are, trapped like a fucking rat.
When you think about giving the player agency, it's about choice. It's about enticement. So it's not like we set out to go, okay, now they have to do this, and then they have to do this, and then there's this. It's not scripted like that. The idea is that the open world is, we hand people a controller and they go, okay, what do I do? What do you want to do? Life is about a series of choices, and we wanted the game to mimic that. So we simply present possibilities. There's a huge mountain over there. Do you want to go climb it? Or do you want to go splunk down in that cave? Or do you want to jump down that cenote? Or do you want to take that outpost? Or there's a plume of smoke that's rising in the distance. What is that? Or there's a temple, and as you get closer to it, you begin to hear music coming up. And you give the player all these things, plus every once in a while you bring in, as a palate cleanse, one of the friends who's in trouble, and immediately, you know, you get a phone call, I'm in trouble, come help me. Or there's an opportunity for you to go down and look at a village and go into the village and do reconnaissance in there or be stealthy. We give the player 360 degrees of approach. And when you talk about replay, when you talk about the idea of the player playing the way they want, you go to an outpost and you look through the binocular or you look through the camera and you see a bear in a cage. And you think to yourself, okay, what am I going to do here? Or wait, you hear a lion that's off in the distance, or a tiger that's off in the distance. And you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to take this Molotov, I'm going to start a fire, and I'm going to drive the animals in there. I'm going to create a mini stampede, and I'm going to take out this outpost. It's a matter of how you play. There's no wrong answer.
But if you survive, you will become a warrior.
You wear the tatau. You feel the jungle around you. Every man you fight deserves to have his life taken from him.
We are the warriors of the Rockyard, and I will lead you to glory!
The goal of this game is to make it personal. So whether we're talking about the story or we're talking about the emotions or the moments in time that the player is playing, the idea is that Voss or any of the other characters are standing too close. It's that first time where we wanted to give the impression like the first time where you thought, oh, I'm in trouble, I'm going to lose this fight. And you realize that you have to back down a little, or you realize that, no, I have to get tough and I have to move forward. So melee combat is very much about that. It's about getting very, very close, making it very, very personal, and then for us, giving you a range of attacks. If you start to be able to use the jungle as like a supermarket, if you start to be able to harvest it, and you can swim down and you see somebody up underneath the water, you can reach up and you can gut them like a pig. If you decide that you want to get up behind somebody and you want to cut their throat, you can pull them back and you can hide the body basically in the brush. You can start to use the jungle as a weapon. But the key thing for us was to give you the opportunity to chain your kills together. So if you get 3 or 4 or 5 people, and I've seen as many as 6, and if you get really good, you can jump down, you can attack from above, and you can do 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 chain kills together all at once, and it's total mayhem.
The only way off this island is to transform myself.
See anything you fancy?
Into something I never thought I could become. But it's not a question of whether my friends will survive.
I'll take your bloody if you like. I like my meat rare.
but how far I'm willing to go.
It's extremely tricky with multiplayer to make sure that you keep special the idea and sacred the idea of single player. You have Jason, who we want to make sure is alone on the island, and you have that feeling of being alone and then beginning to ascend, the man alone surviving in the jungle. So in order to keep that special, we said, all right, let's build an entirely separate campaign. Let's take 4 different players from Jason who are the flip side of the coin. The idea that they're already broken. They've been expelled from society. They bring their own brand of insanity to this story on a completely separate island. And as they work their way through it, you have moments of where they're working together but they don't trust each other. You have moments of competition. You have moments of them being cooperative. And so it's a completely different experience. Add to that PvP, where you have an island where if you've played single player, if you've played co-op, you then think to yourself, okay, you know what, I've been on the island a little too long. I'm starting to understand Voss. I may not like him, but I think I respect him. I want to join that side. I want to be a pirate. I want to be bad for a while. I want to be a pirate and go off and kill stuff. Or you can be with Citra, and you can say, no, I have an affinity for Citra. I fell for her in the single player campaign. I want to be one of the Rakia warriors. And you're in the middle of a brother and sister blood feud. And then finally we have the in-game editor, where you think to yourself, I've just done all of that. I've seen a huge offering from Far Cry. I want to actually build my own world within that. I want to show the Voss that I have inside. And so with that, you take the tools that we've given you and you add to our archipelago.
Up there, way up in the skies, you thought you had your finger on the trigger. But down here, you hit the ground.